Hey everybody, Adam Savage here in my cave for another episode of Infinity Gauntlet goodness. I think this is what you saw the last time we were doing a video, and then I got into, I had to make the other half of this, the palm, and that is a totally different kind of forming that I haven't really done before called chasing, which is to put this piece of metal on a bucket of pitch. I'll explain all this later. And I'm sorry to tell you that I did all this off camera. Literally all of it. And it's really specifically about the way in which there are times I need to fail alone and quietly by myself without the camera rolling. And there are times I'm totally comfortable having the camera rolling for that. And on this, there was sort of so much to wrap my head around at once to get this topography correct. And I'm really happy with where I got it. Just took like a solid 40 hours of me messing around and working at this every day. And I've reached a point where, so the whole goal was to get myself to a point where I knew what I didn't know. I was always going to bring in professional help for this build to instruct me on the more refined parts of it. But I needed to know what questions I needed to know first. And that's why I did all this off camera. That was all part of a meditation of kind of putting the relationship with the metal here into my body in some way enough to be able to benefit from genuine instruction. And that's what's about to happen because, ladies and gentlemen, here in the cave, we have Douglas Pryor, who worked on the actual Infinity Gauntlet and is an expert at chasing, repoussé, and armor making and does some beautiful sculptures. Here are some pictures of them. Yes, right. So you see what I mean. Douglas, okay. Am I right that the Infinity Gauntlet uses almost every kind of metalsmith process there is?
I reckon so. Yeah. I mean, we threw everything at it.
How long did it take you guys to build? You built 2 or 3 originally?
I think we made 3 with enough parts for a 4th in case, but 2 of them were full size and 1 was smaller for the method acting.
Josh Brolin. Yeah. Josh Brolin has spoken in interviews about how much that glove brought to his performance. He loved wearing it, I heard.
Well, that's great to hear. I mean, because you don't get to hear that from them, those people themselves. So, and I mean, none of that exists without a team. And one of my major jobs was interpreting whatever the pattern maker threw my way and make it full 3D. So one of the biggest processes of that is translating that flat image using raising stakes to kind of get your big base shapes first, and then we'll go and get more detailed things with the chasing punches on the pitch.
So Tony Swatton brought you in.
That's right.
And your expertise was specifically this kind of form work, high detail form work. Is that right?
That's right. That's right.
Okay. And then you would get pictures like, you worked with these giant renderings. Hold on, let's just stop. All right, so you guys were working with like renderings like this. This is your reference material, right?
That's right. That's right. So this is a lovely sculpt. I'm sure some very gifted artists put together, but it's a 3D turnaround of something that was actually sculpted on a screen. And so none of the references are accurate except from this, south to north length. And so you kind of had to interpret everything. And
so even though it seems like there's a lot of topographical information in here, there's actually not a ton. You have to do a lot of problem solving.
That's right.
To get all this to work like this.
That's right. And to answer your earlier question, I think it was a couple weeks of work.
A couple of weeks?
Yeah, I mean, for a team of like 8 to 10 people.
Wow.
Yeah.
That is, now that I'm like 80 hours into this.
Well, it's no wonder. Yeah, no, because you're doing a lot of hands worth of labor.
Well, here I'd like to hand you this and have you take a look at it. And we were corresponding as I was working on this. You were giving me some advice.
Not much, but I mean, you're obviously doing very, very well. This is beautiful. This is beautiful, and you've done really well with this.
One thing I'm always surprised by bringing in new processes is there's a point at which you have to give up the drawing entirely. Like the drawing gets you to a certain point, and then the piece has to be made to itself. And one of the great things about some of the images you were sending me, it was really helping me understand the fleshy relationships of this palm here that you had done.
Yeah, because I mean, we're just going off of what that looks like, right? And that palm has this huge bulge for the thumb.
The mound of Venus.
And then it gets much smaller and a little tapers out toward that rounded edge.
Yeah.
And you're right. You've got to kind of let it take a life of its own at a certain point, as long as everything's within proportion to itself.
Right. They're trying to hold to the, like, yeah, there's just a certain point in which, like, that line's not right, but it's right.
Yeah.
2 weeks, 10 people.
Yeah. And I mean, we were often pulling like 10 to 17 hour shifts. I mean, a couple of those days, I remember a few nights that were particularly long.
Wow.
Only because like I was running for coffee for the other silversmiths behind the bench,
Right.
you know, just meticulously sawing all night long
Right. All
for the rush of
piercing
it.
work.
Yeah. All of this, like they were cutting that out by hand on site.
And I had a theory as I was making these little tiny cuts with a file. And then it occurred to me looking at an image that it looks like that was done for real with a chisel, or might have been done with a chisel. Is that regular or reasonable way to attack something like that?
This path, if you just needed to place a line there, yeah, absolutely.
Amazing.
Absolutely.
I surmised that a chisel was possible just from looking at the close-up and realizing, no, you couldn't get a file in where they have it there.
Well, you could file it, you could carve it and sculpt it away, but you could also just with the chasing punch, just add that line right on top. If it displaces any metal across the outside, you can just, you know, take that away with a file if needed.
And you guys had to bring yours to a mirror polish, is that right?
That was requested. And then I think later they ended up like antiquing it more.
Yeah. It has almost a complete paint job on top of the brass is what it looks like.
Yeah. So
you know, blackened and antiqued, but also with some scenic work.
Yeah, you'd get new instruction of whatever you did yesterday and how you needed to redo it.
Oh, right.
Because
it's studio
something
work,
new.
so you're getting changes constantly.
Yeah. The fact that anything gets made at all is a miracle, like honestly.
I really appreciate you saying this is good. I've been living inside of it for so long. I have lost all perspective. And I'm also astounded at the size of it. There is no replica that's even remotely this size.
It's big.
22 inches. Yeah, no, this is right. This is actual size. Every prop I make, I'm sort of looking for a kind of experience.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes I don't know it. I mean, oftentimes I don't know what that experience is until it happens. But I definitely have this feeling that, like, when this is done, it's going to feel like I stole it from a giant.
You know, isn't Thanos supposed to be like huge?
Yeah,
as well. Like he's a giant,
like 2X,
isn't he?
Right?
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's a surreal. I mean, I remember one day we had a 3D printed arm show up.
Yeah.
Like a full purple 3D printed arm, but like the fingers were fused together, so we couldn't use it. So there was just a cool arm to like try to fist bump every day you walked in. But yeah, it was cool for a sense of scale, but it eventually was. I mean, we didn't really use it for anything.
Yeah. So I'm hoping today to get some instruction from you in both raising and chasing. And I know that those terms are semi-interchangeable, or that they can mean lots of different things depending on who you're talking to. But there's a specific part that was the first one Tony Swatton sent to me. He said, if you want to do stuff like this, you should call Douglas Pryor. And he even wrote your name here, Douglas Pryor. And then I had a question, and he was like, here's Douglas's number.
Bless Tony for including me.
I'd love to start the process of making this. And you said to me off camera, this is done at the anvil on stakes, not in a bowl of pitch.
That's right, especially when in a time crunch. I mean, you could do it in a pitch bowl, for sure, you could. It has that capacity, but you can often do a lot of the rough work over shaping stakes so much faster. And in the ecosystem where the time was the only thing we didn't have enough of,
right.
The fluting stakes were super efficient. So this large beveled edge, all of those they essentially look like a lap weld where you just got two layers on top of each other. But yeah, we'll just use like some basic armoring fluting stakes for that. And then this whole curve, you can get over something nice and big and broad and simple like that with just a couple hammer hits.
Amazing. And when you cut this piece out, like when you cut something like that out, do you give yourself extra room and then cut down to it? Or do you work with the critical dimensions and just make your lines really nice and parallel?
At the time, I think this was like that's all you need. Just cut out the exact line.
All right.
And you might have it, pull in a little bit. You're going to come back and file that edge clean if any hammer marks like push that metal against the contour of the perimeter. Right. But otherwise, yeah, straight as is. We won't really have material migration that much, so your finished product will be true to the paper pattern.
Okay. I want to say Douglas has brought out king's ransom of armoring tools and stumps and stakes and hammers. I am learning so much, and this is my humble brag. I feel like I've put together a pretty reasonable beginner's complement of stakes and tools. It's looking at the massive amount that you have brought and their kind of general taxonomy, it feels like I'm off to a reasonable start here.
Dude, I started from nothing, and what you've got is definitely like worth its weight in gold and sweat.
What's been really fun, literally, this anvil was just on the stand with nothing else adorning it 2 weeks ago. But as I spent the last 2 weeks bouncing around, I was like, I got some U-bolts and I needed the hammers closer by and I wanted files close by. And I ended up sort of building an ecosystem around the anvil as I've spun around it.
You've done great.
Oh, good.
You've done great.
Good.
Yeah, and I mean, it's taken me, 10, 15 years to accumulate all the extras that I've got, because when, just like you said, you need something, that's when you solve it,
right.
Instead of trying to like fill a bunch of voids that you don't know why you need them yet.
Yes.
Like wait for the problem to hit you.
Because we've all bought tools that we never got around to using.
Yeah, just live on a shelf. Yeah.
You were saying that you built this stake.
Yeah, that's right. I saw somebody doing this. It was Potter USA. He used to make a bunch of steaks. Sadly enough, there's not like a huge market for shaping steaks.
I know
they're not breadwinners.
No, I know there's very little online.
You couldn't live without them though if sheet metal is what you do.
Yeah.
So this is just a huge. I think this is like 6-7 inch. Like Schedule 80. It's like a 1/2 inch thick.
Oh, Schedule 80
welding
cap.
pipe. Yep, just to cap a pipe, and it's got the bevel already pre-cut for your full pen weld seam, and so I've just put it on a stock of pipe. So, I travel a lot with all my tools, and so the pipe is hollow and it's lighter weight. But this I've backfilled with sand.
To give yourself a little more momentum?
It's mostly to take the noise down.
Oh.
It's like you're ringing a bell right next to your head all day long, yeah?
Yeah, no, even though I wear hearing aids, I have taken them out, and they act as a sort of hearing protection for the armoring. I've been pulling it off and wearing hearing
yeah, you obviously don't want to lose what you already trying to hang on to.
What little I have left.
So this is just welded all the way to the top, and then it's got a seal here, and so you've got multiple weld contact points, and it's crazy stout. Let me pull an old one out.
All right.
So I've tortured this one. This was one I mentioned. Kevin Potter, the generous man. He after things weren't selling, I think a ton. He was like he donated to a bunch of different artists, and
wow.
He I couldn't exist honestly without the generosity of a bunch of people. So he threw this my way, and I was allowed to experiment. And I mean, every time you get a boost like that, it just opens so many doors because you can experiment, you can fail, you can figure out why. And so this is just a really beefed up mushroom steak. I've done hot forging, like I've done, full sheet metal, an 8-foot bit of 1/8 inch. It's been through hell, but it still produces like, I didn't need it mirror finished. I made this one this year. I'm sure in a couple of years it'll look just as rough.
This. Do you take this onto the lathe to get this finish on there?
I don't own many power tools, honestly. There's just some sanding.
Wow.
Yeah.
Because we could chuck this in the lathe and put a pretty nice finish on it.
I believe you. I believe you. And in my humble abode, a lathe takes up a footprint.
Fair.
That sometimes I need to be a little bit more flexible, and if I can have a few more of these,
yeah, that makes total sense.
That's usually what I go for.
So this is the original pattern.
Yeah, I remember when we made these. That's why, because I haven't seen these in years, and it's so surreal to see like those are the exact things I traced.
That's amazing.
Yep, that's right. We just need to cut some out.
All right, I'm gonna cut this out on the bandsaw.
Oh, okay. Great.
I figured that's a nice fast way to deliver it.
Yeah. All right.
Okay.
Well, let's give it a little bit of volume on some of the shaping stakes.
Okay.
Because I would start on something like this and then clean it up on that, and we'll just have a very gentle curve.
Okay.
But it doesn't have to be this deep necessarily. We could almost get away with entirely on that. It's just because it's half hard
Right.
that will save us. It creates a little bit more stability.
Oh, okay.
And this is just the bottom of a acetylene tank.
Oh, of course it is.
Cleaned up. Yeah. That was another gift from a very old friend of mine.
I have seen these before. That's beautiful.
Dude, they're amazing.
And that's just a rawhide hammer.
That's right. There's no point scarring it up more than you need to or traumatizing the metal more than you need to. So you can see how rounded off that is.
Mm-hmm.
And I use it for this kind of thing all the time. You can use a metal hammer for this. It's just fine. I'll do hot forging into this on steel in the very same way.
You mean hot forging, like working with it hot so it's very ductile?
That's right.
Gotcha,
so pulling a thick piece out of this forge and throwing it down and dishing into that. And that's the beauty of that steel form versus just having the wood. But the wood will just burn and take the shape of whatever you need. But
right.
You can see a little bit of scorching from something just like that.
As I noticed the scorching witness marks on the stuff I've been putting together, and then I see them in videos.
Yep.
I know I'm on the right track.
Yeah, no, it's there's some camaraderie in those same like touch marks.
Exactly.
Let's see. So I'm just holding it off the side. I'm trying to capture just this outer curve. If I hold it across the middle and hammer right in the middle, it's so much shape, it's so much metal to try and shift that it ends up wanting to buckle faster than dent.
Right.
And so a small, shallow dishing plate is much more efficient with more difficult metals to work with. Be it thick or stainless steel or whatever.
Yeah.
Isolate your support, bring it in. Because a dish like this, I'll use for everything, anything.
Amazing.
And that will be more efficient. But this is a nice big smooth surface. So I'm just gonna keep cradling. I'm gonna go all the way around until we have enough room to blend in the middle.
It strikes me as you're going, it strikes me that some of your situational awareness of the curves and how they meet each other is like you start to intuit this curve and helps you intuit and understand the final form of this curve because you're thinking along. I like to point out to people that the closing of a car door is one of the great engineering marvels of the modern world, right? This thing meeting on no single straight line and then punk, right? But you're having that kind of mental picture of this piece in your brain by the time you're done shaping it.
And so like that's the beauty of making your own shaping stakes is those forms
become just part of your body.
Were memorized from the moment of their conception. So you start to intuit what you need and when, like really quick, instead of, because the breathing points between the tools you're using sometimes can really bog you down.
Oh, right. I clearly need some stumps in my life.
They're so good. Like I'll go into shops that have, $100,000 of equipment, but they won't have a stump, and I'll have to bring mine from home. I'm just like, it's just a chunk of wood, but it's sometimes they can be hard to find.
God, the smoothness you're getting is amazing.
So we're just gonna be consistent everywhere, yeah?
Right.
Because there's a little distortion. Now I can blend it here. So there's a slight warp. And then on this one, we'll back off that curve and bring it back out,
flatten it back.
Clean up the edges, clean up the interior.
I know that when I anneal aluminum, my Sharpie mark disappears. Does the same happen on brass?
Absolutely. So since you gave it some love and put the illustration on, we'll do a little bit of fluting work. We'll give ourselves a path, a breadcrumb trail to refollow. That way you don't lose the illustration.
Right.
As long as you're happy with it, because now once it has dimension, if you want to move the drawing anywhere, now is definitely the time.
It strikes me that being able to transfer the pattern to the back and the front is one of the more difficult and necessary parts of this.
Yeah. Yeah, being able to see what you're working on is huge.
And where,
So a mushroom steak, like you said earlier while we were talking off camera, one of your workhorses that you've fallen in love with.
Yeah,
you've got,
this little big egg. I just love this guy.
So you've got so many different curves in here. You have this sharper one. You've got 3 because of this like large lemon shape.
Yeah.
You've got this tight one. You've got this long plane. and then you've got this one here. So you've got 3. One that's just round, I've only got 2 really, just the center and then this outer edge.
Right, right.
And so as I hold it here, it matches the shaping stake that I was dishing into, or the dishing plate.
Right.
And as I lever it up, you know, it has to capture a much broader curve.
Yeah.
And because you can, you know, play between the 2 different curves, you have a much wider area of exchange.
Right,
and you can get away with a lot that way. And a simple tool becomes very flexible at that point.
I could just a couple notes. That's sort of looking like one of those.
A gorget.
Yeah, but the sort of demonstrative gorget that the British infantrymen would wear.
Yeah,
like
yeah,
on
the later
chain.
gen ones.
Sort of decorative gorget.
Yeah, the status symbol instead of the
Exactly.
armor. So I'm just taking some of the punch out of it, and once we anneal it, you'll be able to flatten it a little bit more, because this was very likely very gently curved. I might have only given it a slight cylinder shape.
Right, right.
So this as a 3D, because of a dish instead of just that one curve, you've got that full nice deep dish. It's going to have a lot of stability, and it'll be really easy to shape on this. So whether this integrates into this as like a final form, or if you end up redoing this in your own time,
so the curve helps to resist the warping that naturally comes from the stretching.
There's so much strength there. Yeah, you could stand on this and it wouldn't do anything. Like, I mean, feel the tension.
Yeah,
it's super, super strong. I mean, it's hard from shipping.
No, yeah. Oh, I had thought that it went that way. Now I don't know why I thought that.
I believe this rivet goes right there.
Oh, really?
It's one of the things that actually allows this thing to work. I think, if I recall correctly.
And the thumb piece, just as a separate note, this thumb piece didn't move.
The thumb piece.
The copper thumb.
The copper was not articulated.
Right.
The copper was mounted solid.
Yeah, that's
to
what
the
I
palm.
thought. In the film, they've definitely made it move a bit.
You'd have to. But it's magic. Like,
no,
it can do whatever it wants.
This shortens up whenever he's about to do the snap.
Yeah, you get a nice snap sound on a metal object. That's magic itself.
And I know that will never happen, but I do want to make a mechanism for this glove that it snaps.
Oh, well, you can just snap with the other hand. Every time you do it,
I want to build a mechanism where when I pull one string on the bottom, these come down and this comes and then it finishes.
It's like interior clockwork almost. It's gorgeous.
I'm hoping it's length of cable, right?
Oh, yeah,
so it's the shortest ones, the semi ones, and the longest one that does that. And that I can't wait to see it. Feasible.
No, you can do it. Hell yeah.
Okay, so talk to me about how we raise those flutes.
I'm going to use now you've got me snapping. I'll probably snap the rest of the day because of that. I'm probably going to use just a very simple fluting stake. This is just a piece of leaf spring, so it's
nice and
approximately 5160, super, super durable. I've used this for everything for years. And I'm going to use something kind of long and narrow. Got a couple different options here. Rock chipping hammers are super available, and you can just sculpt down the ends to whatever you need. They make great, because they have the mass. You've got this longer eye.
Yeah.
So when you clip things, if it scars up the handle, it lasts a little bit longer. It's got a little bit more wood on it.
That's really cool.
They're brilliant. I've got a couple of them because I'll trim this down to get different thicknesses. So that's a really available and affordable raising hammer. Auto body hammers for planishing are great. Some of the Japanese hammers for miscellaneous work. I mean, that's like a $35, $40 hammer.
That's amazing.
They send it to you rough. So you will have to resurface the heads, but they're incredible. Dude, they're so good. I was so impressed with the hardness and durability. So I cleaned up both sides, and I'll use that forever.
Phenomenal.
And then this was one of those cheaper, they just look like balls on the ends, and I just ground it down to the correct thicknesses
that you wanted,
and then took off that front end, because this hammer is much harder to find, or way more. I mean, they'll add, they'll double the price for essentially something that is not that much more complicated or a different weight or more mass or anything.
Fair.
It can be a lot cheaper and a lot more accessible. You can forge down other hammers that are cheap and available. Even, let me grab this armoring hammer real quick, just because it proves my point.
I was wondering about that one.
So, yeah, one of the best.
What? This is, I've never seen
It's a diagonal peen, dude. It's the best, one of the best armoring hammers because you can stand off away from something, between that straight and cross peen. For armoring your big bellies and helmet parts and big rolls where the metal eventually wraps up and starts to get in the way of a hammer swing. That just gives you a slight change of direction to give you more access for longer.
Is that you grinding for days to get there?
No. Well, you can see these gross hammer marks because I made this in college, so it's not that pretty. This was just like a standard sledgehammer that I pulled off the head, threw in the forge, just drew it out, ground it flush, and from the years of use, you can see the wear out pattern in the middle.
Yeah.
But I've used it for everything and anything. I love this guy. He's so good. But that's more like a bigger forging hammer. But to my point, like you can get away with a lot with very little. Like less is more in a lot of cases.
Okay.
Let's see. I'm gonna start right here. So I'm just using my fingers as a guide. If I touch the back of the stake, this is about hand size, and I can give a bit of a depth gauge. I'm gonna start with a lighter hammer just to get it started. And if I do one side, do you want to do the other?
Sure, by all means.
Perfect. I'm just gonna use the narrow side here. This is actually a substitute to a gauntleting hammer that I made because I was like, got to put on your Sunday best for Adam. Gonna meet Adam for the first time. Don't disappoint Adam. I put, you work with what you have in so many cases. And
so I think right away something's happening here. I'm sorry to interrupt.
No, you're good.
I feel like right away something's happening here in which what normally I think most people think happens if you hit on this side of the stake you've got there is that the metal's going to bend there, but it doesn't. It dips in.
Right. So we have a bit of a distortion. We'll get an S curve almost.
Right.
To the extreme, you could get that to fold on itself and start to play with fold forming if you wanted. But we will give ourselves enough volume, and we can do it from both sides. So you'll create a path.
Right.
Get close to your line. You can come to the other side and do the same thing and push out it even further. And then you'll do one final pass, planishing, building a crisp edge.
And planishing is sharpening up and flattening out.
It's cleaning it up.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Bouging, if you're familiar with that term,
no,
is the in-between of the rough hammer work and the finishing work that comes with planishing. The bouging, like you take it's another bite size. In all the big mouthed fishes, it's a middle fish.
And so that hammer blow is not happening on top of the stake. It's happening just to the side of it. Is that correct?
Just here. So you've got a little room for the metal.
Gotcha.
I'm trying to let this be true to the line.
Right.
And since
that's
I'm
the contact
offsetting
point is the line.
and making a clean enough path to it, because when I flip this, I want that edge to nest appropriately.
That's going to be your guide.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sometimes, the broadness, the thickness of this is a little soft, and you might want something with a tighter bite.
Okay.
Like this. So this is a little more mass to it, so I'm going to start very light. Whenever I'm doing anything on a shaping stake, I'm actually locking my elbow into my body and aligning that arm with the stake.
Okay.
So that way you can the variable of your human machine is only with the one joint instead of with way up here.
Now, this is something I remember from Terry English. Your goal is you don't want to move the hammer, you're moving the material. And the hammer is you're trying to be your own drop hammer.
That's right. And the nice thing about the extra mass of a hammer like this, even though it is a little overkill, is I'm swinging it maybe an inch.
Right.
And it has all the energy I need. So on those days where you're not feeling your best,
go for a heavier hammer.
The leverage will do it for you. You could simply put this through a machine that does a job like this, but we can take tighter turns, we can change our minds, we can go deeper or more shallow. And so it swings in a little bit this way.
So we have a lot more flexibility with this technique than with the mechanical.
It's a little bit more, you can adapt a lot more with this. So I'm just gonna rock it back. I'm gonna straighten that out some.
So in both of these cases, back and front, you're still hitting the same plane, which is the middle plane.
Yeah.
The transition plane between the straight and the bottom.
While we were working, I probably started at an angle like this.
Right.
And now that I'm getting closer, this keeps walking further back.
Okay.
And that's why this comes on a slight incline like that. It's to move around that edge and to make it wander where you need it.
It sounds like you can grab a lot of armor making tools in a standard automobile pick and pull lot.
Yeah. Or the geology section in your Home Depot.
Oh, yes, there you go.
Or whichever hardware store you've got. But yeah, with all that stuff, genuinely less is more. And let's just do a little blending, see what we can do to pull this over.
And that is to try and get a sharper
transition. Just
right
clean it
there
up
along
because
that line.
this is just a nice soft bend. Yeah. We want a nice, even if you don't get a perfect crisp edge,
Mm-hmm.
a crisp edge is something that you can accomplish much easier with chasing.
Right.
But with something like this, with the tools that we have in front of us, I can still get the reflection to be, spot on.
Right.
And the plane of reflection will sharply change between the two. Because now I'll planish this surface here, and then I'll planish against that edge, and I'll get them to meet in the middle. So even though what's underneath might be on the soft side of an edge, this one will still have a crisp, distinct line.
There's a fascinating thing that I was thinking about as I was doing it, which is that it can be really hard to see the metal when it's a bunch of different textures and reflectivities. And that I imagine that old armorers must have used pumice or something to bring the state of the armor to like some sort of uniformity so you could check reflection lines. I found reflection lines incredibly helpful.
Yeah, I mean, they can also hide a lot, right? Because when you're looking at a mirror, all you see is the reflection.
Right.
So that matte finish can
be less forgiving,
allow you to judge volumes much easier.
Right.
So in Uchidashi, they take this philosophy to another level, and the chasing punches, all of your chasing punches here have a nice mirror finish.
Yeah.
But a lot of the Japanese punches are intentionally textured with a rasp or with a hand file. And they have like a Velcro texture, and the whole surface becomes matted.
Wow.
And then they'll come back in with scrapers and
wow.
clean up the surface. All the surface work is done in post of the sculptural effort.
Fascinating. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, there's lots of really brilliant ways to do anything.
Yeah.
None of it's wrong. It's all just what you need when you need it.
Wow. I've been watching that reflection line come up. Oh. And you're not using a lot of force.
None at all, yeah. Might do 2 passes just for good effort. But it's real snug. I like it. It's fine. So kind of like if we had some Play-Doh and we just made a little sausage of it, and if I just took my hand and chopped it, it's just going to stretch kind of this way.
Right.
So that's all we're doing. This is acting like that cross peen from the other side. So this is more your flat anvil, and the metal is drawing against it with this as the main shape. And so as the metal expands across that anvil surface, your flattening plate, that's expanding.
Gotcha.
And that's essentially it. And you could just, rinse and repeat on either side depending on what you needed. You could clean up that interior.
Right.
Often cases, this is enough. I saw one of your hammers. That's actually probably going to be brilliant at this. The one that you said was your bread and butter. Yeah.
These two are my
These
favorites.
two. So like, you can see how this has a profile like this, but it does still have sort of a distinct edge.
Right.
On a lot of mine, I'll remove this because I'm taking a lot of bends and turns.
Right.
But then in an instance where you have to have a nice flush edge, something like that edge is going to align, and you could just find where it sits and start to work. anytime I reposition, just let your tools hold it down.
Nice.
Keep your angle.
That is really cool.
And I've still got that slight path wander right there. So you may just take a moment and clean some of that up. So, and that's one of the reasons I do keep a square faced edge is if I have to do a little bit of quality control.
Now, was that starting up at the top was to move the line a little bit? Or to take the bend out?
Yeah, I'm attempting to just draw that line true straight again.
Gotcha. I'm so grooving on this. It's amazing.
That's going to be very resilient. Like, that's a very strong shape. It's insanely tough right now. So if you wanted to do more than that, I would anneal it first for certain.
With that line, you mean?
That's right. Yeah, I wouldn't take it any further because I think it's pretty close to being done.
Dude.
As far as like that one section. So I would just
move on to the next one.
Yeah, let's do the other side.
All right.
Do you want to have a crack at it?
I do. I'm terrified, but yes.
Oh, you're going to do great. You're going to do great. That one first.
All right.
Maybe that one second. That's probably all you'll need until here.
Okay. All right. I see your thing about the line. That is really cool. And I'm trying to keep that on the line, and I'm hammering just right there.
And you can change that angle to where it's just about there.
Ah, okay.
Because it will, the leverage is just a little bit more forgiving, and you'll make that dent on that side a little easier.
I appreciate that. I was trying this earlier, a couple days ago like this, and wasn't having as much success. It's also amazing to me that your hand can provide enough stopping force for a hammer, right? That there's this softness to this person. Okay, here we go. Sorry, I'll stop.
Well, in those early days, I mean, you'll feel some kick.
Yeah.
But the kick in the left should almost be, I mean, as minimal as you can, because that's how on balance the stake work is.
Oh, also I can see it much better.
And so, I mean, like, because you can have a line of sight on it the entire time, your finished result's that much cleaner.
Right. I can see my hammer blows are all over the place.
Well, you've got a couple passes. They unite. They keep going.
Oh, right. You were doing this. Sorry.
And if it ever feels like it's a glancing blow,
yeah,
or if the hammer is pushing down on this side more than it's moving the metal,
right,
just keep changing that incline as it goes. And you feel the balance of the impact until it feels right.
Oh, that's fascinating.
Yeah, that's brilliant. That's perfect.
Wow.
Dude.
The idea of just as a machinist and a hard-edged model maker who doesn't work sculpturally except under duress in the past, the idea of a hammer blow bringing something smooth is magic to me. And there were a few points on the gauntlet where I had like a dent, and I looked at it and I just was like, dunk from the backside, and the dent was gone. And like that feeling was a really good feeling.
Yeah. No, it's magic. It still feels like magic.
So I feel really happy about the evenness of this. Oh, right. So I just want to clean up this. And then go to the back and do the same on the back side.
Flip it.
Ah, thank you.
There you go. And if it feels like, well, that feels like it's got maybe some play. I don't feel as confident with where it's landing.
See. So now I'm hitting on the other side.
Exactly.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
And you can be even more aggressive on the angle,
right,
to continue to stretch it down. And in these moments, you can actually let metal on metal perfectly pinch. Like instead of like beaver teeth overlapping slightly, you can have them chatter right on top.
Okay. All right. But I am going to try and, all right, gotcha. Okay. I'm having a mental disconnect here.
Because it's on the other side of a curve,
Yeah.
It may not feel like it's gliding past as easily.
This second pass, I feel like I'm having a weird disconnect with it.
We might have flipped sides a little early.
Oh, really? Oh, okay. Oh.
And so like if you feel like it's kind of wandering,
Yeah.
and you need a little course correction,
Come back to the
flip
first
it to the other side,
All right.
true it up some, because again, this is a game of tug of war.
Wow.
As each pass gets more delicate, you'll find you'll be readjusting a little bit more often.
Readjusting my hold and my orientation.
Yeah, as the holding hand wants to be in that sweet spot gets tighter and tighter and tighter. So you just end up adjusting more often. And the only reason my side looks cleaner is because I've got those planishing passes stacked on top of the volume you've just added.
And I'm still dealing with the same thing you were, which is a bit of a curve there right now.
That's right.
Shall I try this on this side now? What do you think?
Let's have a look at it.
Yeah.
Well, your depth is like right on where mine is. It's just that line correction. So anytime that I need to feed, it's like feeding a machine or feeding into a machine. You have to kind of get it started, start to correct the angle at its source, and then just hold it there and let each one kind of stomp its way through that new path.
Okay.
And I think so if you start where it's really true, on either end it's good. So start there where it's solid and just feed into it at that slight lever point lifting up.
Thank you for that.
And it's a subtle thing, but it will travel because they stack on top of each other.
Oh,
It's looking better.
it's that relationship of the strike to the
In anything like course correction, sometimes you got to bully it a little.
Yeah.
And so you might have like one messier path, and then the cleanup path will happen afterward. Each pass will just continue to refine it.
Wow, even the planishing pass allows for a little movement of the line.
Right, and that's exactly what I was saying earlier, where like if you're a little off, in the process of cleaning it up, you have more and more time to access anything giving you any trouble. Yo, nice.
And I feel like I have just a little bulge there to take care of. Wow, that is fascinating. What about and crisping up that line in there?
You can do. So at the point to where there's a couple ways to do that. You could use the edge of a flattening plate to actually try and support the metal on that plane.
Oh, right.
And you could be rougher here and expand that metal against a flattening plate. Or you can be very delicate with some of your planishing marks. Sometimes though, with a planishing blow, this way, it skips across this, and you have a bunch of glancing blows that are dragging across the metal.
It's hard to.
So that's why working from the inside for some planishing work, if you have the access,
Right.
You don't always, but especially if you think you're gonna, well, for this particular project, mirror finish was requested. So at that point,
I'm definitely not doing.
There's going to be surface work. So if you mirror finish it, you're going to lose all that hard work. So maybe don't worry about putting in so much beautiful planishing. But if you're going to show it off, you're going to highlight that feature, just take your time, love on that planishing, and let it do what you need.
All right.
Now you've got this nice little section right there.
Yeah.
And we could definitely use that to clean up that line.
Oh, yeah.
And to just blend that some.
Okay.
Let's try this one. This has a little more mass to it. Now I'm giving it some power just to expand that metal. You can see how much it's changing shape.
Yep. Wow.
You kind of have to be careful. To a point, you can gain a lot of extra height you don't need.
Right. If you go too hard.
And so you can see where I've stopped.
Look at that, yeah.
Versus the clean path that we've gotten. So just a little bit, you could probably even just come in with a little emery cloth or a sunshine bright cloth, and that'll look fine as is. So let me just finish that. But the line has migrated some again.
Yeah.
So even though this is that hard, because we're now working against a flattening plate, if you have some line wander, it's fine.
Amazing.
Because a broad edge like that, you can't go wrong. I chose a thickness we hadn't used yet to flood out any metal against any jagged edges.
All right.
That's pretty much it.
Okay.
Now, and you could go back and forth, because as I pass it through the light, you can see in the middle, it flooded out completely. And on this either side, there's some metal.
Yeah, some little bits.
Leaving a little bit of defect here and there. So I'd let the other side get caught up, get them pretty close. Then you can chase little things like that if they're still heckling you.
Hey, came out pretty straight.
Yeah, it'll keep cleaning up too. I mean, you have such a steady flat edge right there that it's really, really easy to course correct.
Wow. Now I've gone way deep.
Well, hey, it's all good, because you could always, take your rubber mallet or your rawhide or something wood and hold it this and just kind of pull the punch from how deep that is by changing the angle a little bit. So if you needed to change it a little bit and still keep that longer reflection line, you could massage it down some.
Okay. It's a perfect moment. Tony Swatton sent this up 2 days ago, and it just arrived. And I think there's reference in here for us to play with and to know about. There's a thumb. There's a thumb plate. But first, dude, it's the very part.
Oh man, I haven't seen this for years.
You made this part.
I think so, yeah.
Oh, it's amazing. I forgot that he was sending literally the part, but it just arrived in our mailbox.
And look how fast we had to go.
I can see the time crunch.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure. I'm pretty sure this was me. And so, it's like tools that aren't yours or in a pinch. So what I'm really glad we have this for is it tells you which way they're stepping.
Yes.
Because I was preparing to do it the other way, staring it down that way, but it's tiered down, moving inward, which is cool. I'm really glad we have that.
These are really hard questions to answer, even from good reference.
Well, from a photo, the lighting could tell you, the right or wrong way.
Yeah.
You just don't know.
That is really delightful.
And as we path these,
Yeah.
this whole piece will flatten out.
Well, I
some.
can see, yeah, I get that, because right away, the actual central curve is dead nuts the same.
Yeah, which is
Right.
wild, because like I didn't have this with me like at the time.
Oh, Jesus.
Gives you a sense of scale, eh?
Wait, that's the real thumb piece?
Well, it's
Or that, or, oh, fascinating.
there you have it. So I think it's
Right, this is this being made, clearly.
this is downsized. So this is the true one. I think this might have been the one I had to remake.
The one that
And
Studio
that's
came
why
and said was
maybe
too
that's
big.
why it was sent back. Now, if we put them side by side, it's
Yeah,
minimal,
the centerpiece is
but
the
like
same.
look how much that teardrop is cut off.
Yes.
So it is downsized, but maybe by like, I don't know, 10%. Not crazy.
Wow.
And you do gobble up quite a bit of this for the rolled edge.
Right.
But yeah, so this I would have had to roll by hand instead of
Yep.
using a bead roller. Just because I don't have that many machines.
Oh.
Yeah, and all that discoloration, that must have been annealed and then pickled and then just left alone.
Oh, no way. It's this is the copper
interesting.
piece.
Interesting.
Right?
Yeah, except this is the brass version. And I think we started making this and then they asked for it to be made out of copper. And we must have stopped.
Finger form, labeled test.
Nice.
This is unbelievable reference.
That is probably the pinky
That's the
finger.
pinky.
I'm pretty sure, based on how small it is, because it's not long enough. And then that's, yeah.
There's
So
your moon.
Tony made, I think he probably would have made a die, but I had to chase them on the spot, I think. Better, man, I forget. It's getting on in years now. He might have handed this to me and I had to finish chasing it or something. But I think at the time I had to just hand draw it on, which is why they're two different crescent shapes.
Oh, and then this guy. Wait a minute, I'm really excited about that.
Oh yes, see if it even plugs in. It's not 1,000 years off, is it? That's pretty close.
It's not crazy off. I was really trying to understand this topography here.
It was a weird one.
I can see the bend in the photos, but it's hard to figure out how they go. And this matching, those curves matching each other is a really beautiful detail in the final piece.
Well, thanks. James Glipsview was the pattern maker, and he made that. I just had to make it 3D.
And then this guy gets a kick out. This guy gets this whole skirt out here.
That's right. We'll put that in last. It's too much strength. So if you have to change any of that,
So you
it'll
did
get
that
in
kind
the way.
of because you add so much structure, it's like hard to move around after you've
It
done
would
that?
totally isolate any
Wow.
mobility in access to the piece.
Okay, so now that we have this amazing reference that you built, what is this, 2016, 2015?
Probably 16 or 17.
Wow.
Might have been 17. So yeah, let's have a look at this. Yeah, you see those tiny little
Yep.
intentional bite marks?
Yeah.
That's from a punch.
Ah, okay.
No hammer is going to get in there to clean that up. But we can start getting it roughed in, no problem. Give it a path, shortcut some of the work. Before we move on, for that planishing, we flushed out this field by expanding that surface against a flattening plate.
Mm-hmm.
For the other side, the top side, if we wanted to do the same thing, I would not hammer from the inside necessarily, because trying to match that edge, blind hammering like that, it'll just be tricky.
Gotcha.
So it's so much easier to set that on a stake with a crisp edge,
and then planish
and then
it.
just massage, coax that edge toward
Okay.
to get it to be aligned with the way you want it to be.
Gotcha.
But before we moved away from that, that was the last thing
Fair.
to say there. A curve like that's going to be fine. A curve like this actually might be good.
Okay.
So let's start
So
there.
you're going to use this in a way to sort of draw the first pass at this line.
That's right. And so my angle, I'm dead on. That's perpendicular
You're
to the
going right on
surface.
top of it.
And I'm just going to change ever so slightly. So this edge is
Okay,
bringing
right.
it down to the metal. Wow.
Oh, look how much room you have to move it up to the line too.
And there I was a little off, and I'm just gonna walk it in. So that's why I've got those two fingers as support. Goes all the way, or do we stop short?
It stops.
I'm just losing my illustration. Where'd that Sharpie sneak off to? Because it will expand a little.
Right.
But yeah, let's have that like that. Like that.
Okay.
Cool. Since this is a little shallower than what we've done with this step, do you want me to match this depth or aim for something like that?
Let's aim for something like that. I feel like if we start trying to match this depth, we'll end up with a ton of
It'll be huge.
Yeah.
Yeah, it'll be huge.
Oh, and now you're going to go in and do the drop there.
Yeah. And I just wanted to give myself enough of a path.
Mm-hmm. I'm also starting to see how much the crisp reflection lines can hide crimes.
Oh, yeah. It was like your really great designed paint jobs, like you were talking about earlier, designed to be picked up by camera.
Yes, the details that fill stuff into your eye.
It's like your brain will connect the dots for you as long as you have those, planes catching the light. I say it pretty often where, like, as a relief artist, you are primarily sculpting with light. Everything is a field of depth. It's an illusion of depth.
Yes.
Right? Just like the side profile on a coin. Look at it dead on from the side instead of the way it's meant to. It looks like a flounder, the weird distorted perspective.
Yeah.
So you just have to get the reflections to do the work for you.
It strikes me that you're looking for starting points that are like the easiest to grab and start from.
You need those anchors.
Right.
Those safe harbors to lean in and out of. And then you can bridge the gap across long straightaways. But if this path gets squirrely, I can make it permanently there. I don't need that. So just, start on your larger subjects here that are a little easier to control and bridge the distance. See how that started to wander in a little? My leverage wasn't enough. And so it had the acceptability. It's leaning down. A glancing blow will drift down.
Oh,
So by
okay.
angling enough, it stabilizes and pushes into the stake instead of drifting.
Gotcha. Oh, wow. Okay.
So at the point to where you have to do a little course correction, start on the other end, lean it where you like, and just head back the way you came.
Wow.
It could have been a path like this that I go and tidy up on a chasing pass.
Right.
Or it could be the actual upset interior. On site, I have nothing that fits that.
Right.
These corners, how do they even exist? That's why this top is rounded. It's left undefined because there was no resist except the pitch, which is quite flexible, where we have these clean reflections elsewhere because we could massage that line into that crisp corner, where this had nothing supporting it except the pitch, so it was a little softer.
Yeah.
And it would have taken a little bit more time to bring that to true. But again, I think...
Do people use electric or pneumatic hammers for repoussé?
Yeah, I've heard of it. I've seen it. It kind of depends on your sense of scale and how effective is that and how simple are your shapes. It's totally doable. But at the point where a hammer is moving faster than you can think and see,
right,
you are doing work unintentionally.
Yes.
So for very broad planes,
Gotcha.
I find that very forgiving.
Right.
For very specific work, it's a lot less helpful. There's lots of different tools that will do work kind of like this, but they also require a lot of space. They require a lot of money. They require someone with training where, like, that's a $30 tool.
It does
and
blow
it fits in my pocket. It's like...
It has not been lost on me that, like, you can have English wheels and planching hammers and all sorts of stuff, and you can still do everything with a big heavy object and a small handheld heavy object.
Yeah. And then you have the familiar relationship with all of that leverage and sculptural practice.
Right.
So if you start there and then go to those machines, you can do anything. If it calls for it, you know when to touch those things. So again, neither is superior. It's just kind of depends on what you're making.
Gotcha. This is amazing, this little feature, because I would have never gotten that. I would have gotten here and wondered why this didn't work, because I would have chased that to follow the same angle.
Yeah, isn't that something? I wonder if that's... It must be shown in the drawings. I must have made it that way on purpose. Because, someone who models online or on their computer is not necessarily going to have to wonder the practicality of that exchange. It's like, you've got a four-dimensional staircase happening in front of you, and you're like, well, I can make most of those angles. It's like you're still stuck trying to make it exist.
I love also that the artifact of this sort of like the scoop up from having started it here is also visible here.
Oh, right. Isn't that something? And it's like, and that's a flat tool going through a curve.
Right.
And, look at how this is flattened out some.
Yeah.
And it's real rough. We can come in and clean that up. I was just stabilizing the path to get the other side of the line started. And you would then go back in an additional pass to keep tidying that plane up. Because that's not too aggressive of an angle, but you might still go to a larger surface than this little edge.
All right. So, well, shall I try this?
You should. Okay. You should.
All right. Here we go. Hi.
that should be good because we moved that drawing a little bit.
Yes, yeah. All right, so I'm gonna, oh. I'm gonna stop there.
There you go.
And then it's...
You might do a little more angle on this interior
okay.
curve.
Nope. Wait.
You have a chance to dent it back in from the other side.
Yeah.
Remember, because we're just gonna add that
right,
line.
right.
So if it overshoots, it's not really that much of an issue.
All right.
There you go.
Okay. Yeah. So I'll be able to workshop that little.
Totally. I mean, like, 3 or 4 hammer hits and it'll be like it was never there.
All right. And then, there's this, right. This comes in and down.
At this point, I switched to this guy.
Oh, right.
And then we're just doing the first step that we had done, but not quite as deep. The first pass is always like, where are the tools?
Right, yes.
And then the second pass, you can change your angle and be more aggressive, and you'll see it really come together, usually by the second or third pass. And you can go all the way to the edge.
Oh, right. I
First one.
forgot about that. Oh, that feels really good when you when you start to watch the line create and you know you're in the right zone. They're few and far between, but I'm feeling those moments more and more. Okay, I don't think I drew this line low enough. I think if this comes over here.
Yeah, it's magic. Look, I'm doing it.
Yeah.
I'm doing it.
Look
it's happening.
All right, I'm going to stop.
That's about as deep as I went.
Right.
My intent is to come back on the anvil or a flattening plate and just tidy up the edge of that like we had done before.
Right.
And that'll make it a little cleaner. Or it goes in the pitch pot and we essentially do the same thing anyways.
Gotcha. All right. And so then you started working on this line from here.
That's right. That's right.
And the line gives you a little bit of a reference point. Oh, that's great.
Lean it back a little bit because you'll tighten up into the curve instead of hammering past the curve.
Oh, nice. I see what you're saying.
That's it.
Dude.
That's it.
I mean, I see where to go and how much harder, it's amazing.
But I mean, you'll be done in short order as well. I mean, because it's only a couple more lines.
Right.
So,
and it's, we can come in.
It's this tricky these corners in here.
Right.
Where it could be fruitful to actually stop and just grind out since we're just working brass.
Right. Oh, grind out a little steak.
Sure. Just add a piece of mild. 1018, something easy. Doesn't have to be crazy. And if you like it, then you can replicate it in something higher quality. But yeah, just to get past those little corners, if it helped, make one of these, but half its size so it fits in something like that.
Oh, yeah, we totally could. And then were you doing a little planishing on this one just to?
Let me look.
Oh, you have?
Yeah, I might have. I see some hammer blows on top.
Right. I just want to.
If you struggle with visibility and you can't get closer to it, I end up straddling. Instead of bending your neck, if you could resist the bench goblin mode, it's really helpful.
Totally. Oh my God. All right. Douglas is such an amazing teacher. I was so happy to have him here in the cave. There is this artifact that happens where you're working around a master in which they make everything look really easy. And boy, it's not easy. When you look at his lines here versus my lines, man, I'm learning a lot. Let's just put it that way. And also, nothing I learned to do on this helped me with this. Each one is a unique process, but I'm slowly improving. And in the next episode, I actually tackle this beautiful piece. This is a production-made thumb cap from the Infinity Gauntlet out of Tony Swatton's shop. And I am going to try and make one of these from scratch using all the chasing and hammering techniques that Douglas taught me. So that'll be next episode. Thanks for joining me. This is Adam out. Thank you guys so much for watching. And while usually I use this space to tell you about new merch, I'd like to tell you about some classic merch. Specifically, my favorite thing we have ever produced, which is the Adam Savage Shop apron. I love it when people bring these to me to sign at my cons. But if you can't get to one of our cons, that's fine. You don't have to wait because we are selling both signed and unsigned versions of these aprons at adamsavage.com. Get yours today and start wearing it in.